Good morning, Metalheads Unit. Welcome to a new episode of the Metal Meltdown. And today we're looking at the sophomore album from American supergroup Hollywood Vampires. The name Hollywood Vampires, believe it or not, actually has a lot of history behind it, going as far back as the 1970s, when Hollywood Vampires was the name of a drinking club featuring some of rock and roll's biggest names of the time, including Elton John, Alice Cooper, John Lennon, Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees, Keith Moon of The Who, American songwriter Harry Nilsson, and nowadays Alice Cooper is once again using the name Hollywood Vampires for this band, playing covers from some of his favorite bands as well as some of his friends and fallen bandmates. It's a morbid but genuinely kind of sweet idea, and he's brought with him some interesting talent. You know, he's got Aerosmith guitarist Joe Perry. There's a rotating lineup of backup musicians. For a while, Duff McKagan and Matt Sorum of Guns N' Roses were a part of the band. If I'm not mistaken, what's-his-face from The Cult is in it right now. Okay, I may have been wrong about that. I don't see anyone from The Cult on the touring lineup. However, I do see people who have worked with Ozzy Osbourne, who have also worked with Alice Cooper in his band. And in a very interesting turn of events, you also have Academy Award nominee Johnny Depp. Yeah, Edward Scissorhands is part of this band for some reason. Mind you, Johnny Depp has made music before. Years ago in the mid-90s, he did an alt-rock record called P, and he's also contributed to some music from Danny Elfman, Marilyn Manson. He's actually worked with Joe Perry before, performing lead guitar on a song from Aerosmith's last studio album. And on top of that, his fascination and love of hard rock and heavy metal has been well documented. In fact, some of his most famous characters are based off of classic rock musicians. Take, for instance, Captain Jack Sparrow from Pirates of the Caribbean, who is directly inspired by Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. Or his version of Willy Wonka, which was inspired by Marilyn Manson and Michael Jackson. So yeah, I guess, objectively speaking, it's not the strangest thing in the world, but it is still kind of strange. But it really doesn't matter who's in the band, it matters how they've come together. And on this album, Rise, I don't know that they've really come together all that great. I mean, their first album was fine, a collection of questionable but mostly forgettable covers. They do a bunch of touring. I remember seeing them live at the Grammys, and I thought that was pretty cool because they did a tribute to Lemmy Kilmister. They played Ace of Spades. On this album, the band is trying their hand at more original content, and it doesn't come together all that great. What was once a tribute to some of rock's greatest songwriters and musicians now kind of sounds like the ultimate dad rock band. Like if you ask your white suburban dad what his premier rock band would sound like, it would probably sound a little something like this. And calling this original material is a bit of a stretch. It's a collection of rock and roll tropes for the most part, and the rest of the time the band is literally just trying to emulate very specific sounds from a very specific time. A track like I Want Mine Now is a fantastic example of everything I'm talking about. Stylistically, it's all over the place. A mishmash of New York Dolls and a grittier Alice Cooper with psychedelic tinges and some really lame, uninspired lead guitars. I have no idea who decided that this song needs to be as long as it does, but spoiler alert, it doesn't need to be as long as it is. It just doesn't. Or a track like Who's Laughing Now, which starts to feel like a more modern Marilyn Manson channeled through super underground garage rock, thanks to all the reverb, thanks to all the static, thanks to all the fuzz, coating everything, that minor industrial heft behind it. In the verses, the vocal flow is even reminiscent of Marilyn Manson and Rob Zombie. And the chorus, that's a whole other story. Someone decided that maybe Johnny Depp should sing a couple songs on the album, and the chorus for Who's Laughing Now is one of them, and, well, he's not the worst singer ever, but he should stick to acting. He gets another shot to sing on one of the album's few covers, Heroes, where I think he fares a little bit better, although he does emulate the classic David Bowie style a bit too much, but it is inherently better, so 1 point for you, I guess. Heroes also mostly just sounds like the original, but with a lot more heavy metal guitar in it. In fact, there's a really irritating rhythm guitar part floating over Depp's vocals in the very beginning that carries through a lot of the track. I have no idea why it hangs over the song the way it does. It doesn't add anything, it doesn't do anything. Just get rid of it. This is another moment where someone in the sound booth should have said, yo, there's something we need to do to this track to make it better, and maybe they did and no one listened, but c'est la vie. I'll give Johnny this, though. He's not the worst vocalist on this record. That honor goes to Joe Perry, who sings on one track another cover of You Can't Put Your Arms Around a Memory from Johnny Thunders. The track itself musically is pretty faithful to the original, but it's Joe's vocals where this really falls apart. The dude cannot sing, and the band is clearly aware of this as they put so many fucking vocal effects on him. His approach to this track is to just be as deadpan and monotonous as possible. Now, don't get me wrong, Johnny Thunders is by no means a vocal virtuoso himself, but he sang this original song with heart, with honesty, whereas Joe sounds like he's just going through the motions. He's just there, sitting there like, you can't put your arms around a memory. You can't put your arms around memory. Like, you've spent how many years with Steven Tyler, one of the most iconic voices in rock and roll, and you can't even manage to put a little bit of emotion into this? Really, dude? The album does generally, though, fare at its best when it does lean heavier on those Alice Cooper influences, and when Alice Cooper is also at the forefront of the sound. Another example is Mr. Spider, which harkens back to some of the late 80s material that Alice Cooper did. And honestly, it's not a bad track, although, yes, another track where maybe we should trim 2 minutes off. I need to have a talk with whoever fucking produced this record. And I also found myself jamming on Welcome to Bushwhackers, which features John Beck on guitar. And Joe Perry clearly feels a lot more comfortable with John on here, because the two are completely in sync and playing some really tasteful bluesy chops with a bit of a folky, almost southern flair to it. The only other real risk that I think the band takes here is on a track like We Gotta Rise, which almost sounds like that old Roger Waters solo album combined with Bob Dylan's Like a Rolling Stone, with lyrics where Alice Cooper complains about being old and we gotta rise up, society sucks, man. Look, Hollywood Vampires is well-intentioned, and Alice Cooper is clearly doing the best he can with what he's got, but that's the problem. He doesn't have a lot. The editing is really bad on this record. The sound mix is really bad on this record. Joe Perry is going through the motions on this record. Johnny Depp isn't really doing much to help him out either. His guitar playing is incredibly bland and unimpressive, to say the least. Some of his so-called solos on this record are really not much better than what you would hear from an amateur teenage guitarist in high school. And even if all of those things were there, even if everyone was totally on fire and on point, I don't know if it'd matter, because the songwriting is still pretty bad. So I'm going to give this a 1.5 out of 5. I really don't see any reason why anyone should have to pick this up, other than sheer curiosity. Again, maybe it'll satisfy your white suburban dad for a couple minutes. He'll sit down and go, that's what rock and roll used to be. Yeah, Alice Cooper. But in that case, just play some fucking Alice Cooper. For that matter, play some really great modern rock that hits a lot of those same classic notes. Show him Glorious Sons. Show him Monster Truck. Show him Greta Van Fleet. Hollywood Vampires is such an inessential and unnecessary listen. It's just not worth it, even just to satisfy your white suburban dad. If this project is going to keep going, they either need to bring in outside songwriters for the next album, or just continue as a touring band, because the albums at this point haven't really done much for me personally. I mean, personally, I'd rather just see Alice Cooper do his regular shtick. I don't want to see Hollywood Vampires, especially when, as of late, Joe Perry has had a lot of trouble performing live. If you watch some of the recent shows from Aerosmith's residency in Las Vegas, he really has trouble playing some of those classic Aerosmith songs. He's forgetting notes, he's forgetting lyrics, he's messing up his parts a lot. And now that I think about it, that may have also impacted this record as well. Maybe he's not fully there anymore. Maybe that's why he plays it everything so deadpan and safe on this record. I don't know for sure. I'm not him. I'm not his doctor. Just an educated guess. So maybe that's the same for Johnny, too. He's been going through a weird midlife crisis. He's, been going through a divorce. His movies haven't been doing so great recently. And he loves rock and roll, so maybe he just finally went, I'm just going to be in a classic rock band. I don't give a fuck, man. So whatever. He's just in there and he doesn't contribute much. I don't know. Whatever the case may be, these guys clearly don't have the full chemistry that they think they have. And I think it results in one of the lamest rock albums of the year. 1.5 out of 5. It's a bad record. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be. So what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? Thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. And you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.